Hi everyone, and welcome to the virtual edition of our year-round member screening series, Film Independent Presents. I'm Richa, Director of Events here for Film Independent. Before we get started, I have to give some praise to some of our supporters. Thank you to our incredible lead sponsor, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, and our partner, Vision Media, and our media partner, the Los Angeles Times. Speaking of moderator, I'm honored to be here today with television critic for the Los Angeles Times, Lorraine Ali. Please take it away.
Hello, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us for this Film Independent panel today for Netflix series Never Have I Ever, which is a coming-of-age comedy about the complicated life of a modern-day first-generation Indian-American teenage girl growing up in the San Fernando Valley. And if you can tell, I have a San Fernando Valley lilt, so I know a lot about that. I'm here with writer, showrunner, and executive producer Lang Fisher, Maitreyi Ramakrishnan, who plays Devi Vishwakumar, Richa Moorjani, who plays Devi's cousin Kamala, and Poorna Jagannathan, who plays Devi's mother, Dr. Nalini Vishwakumar. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And I'm going to try and aim the questions at you, but if you want to jump in, feel free. The first thing I wanted to ask you all is, Never Have I Ever became this kind of instant hit when it premiered, and it premiered earlier this year. And you're headed into season 2, but why do you think it sort of had that, why do you think it resonated with audiences? And it wasn't just particularly Indian American audiences, it was like everybody saying, that's the way I grew up. I mean, I'm Iraqi American, that's the way I grew up. My friends who aren't, that's the way I grew up. So why do you think it resonated that way? And I guess I'll start with, I don't know, with you, Maitreyi.
Yeah, well, it's funny when I have like people tell me like, yo, even like my white friend watched Never Have I Ever. I'm like, wow, I didn't know, losing a parent was only for brown people. Crazy. But that's the thing, right? Like, Davy really is just like a 15-year-old girl. Yeah, for sure, a daughter of immigrant, parents and whatnot, but she's like a mess like any other 15-year-old kid in high school. And the characters around her, her best friends, the guys, her mom, her cousin are all unique characters going through their own journey of something that they've never done before. And I think that's what people really love about it, because there really is something for everybody.
Right. And I quickly want to point out that Netflix is a sponsor of Film Independent's Episodic Lab, and Never Have I Ever is part of that program. So correct me if I'm wrong here, Lang, but you just had one of their fellows shadowing, which I think is just important to mention because this show focuses so heavily on the next generation. But this series has a pretty unique perspective that we don't often see on screen. So how did this idea come about? And also, how did you get the John McEnroe voiceover? And they're like, how the hell did that happen? And it's brilliant.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I mean, this show happened because initially Netflix wanted to make an autobiographical show about Mindy in like middle school as a period piece in like the 90s. And Mindy felt like she wasn't interesting enough to have a show about her in the 90s. But she said, I would do like a modern day like story about like a teenage Indian American girl. And Mindy and I worked together for a long time on the Mindy Project, and she reached out to me and said, would you want to work on this with me? And so we sort of came together to kind of, using our sort of combined teenage experiences to kind of develop these characters and make this story. A lot of, obviously the stuff about the family comes from like her childhood and her family and community. But we both have lost parents. I lost my father. And so a lot of, we both like the grief aspect of it is from both of us. We also both came from tennis families and we, I think we both kind of felt like we as teenage girls were nerdy, but we weren't wallflowers. We had like big personalities and we were loud and we're like awkward, but we like, you know, like we're never quiet. And I think there's a lot of stories about like sort of like quiet, awkward girls out there. And we wanted a girl who was loud and had a big personality and who also had a lot of anger, like who had a like rage. And like a lot of teenage girls I knew, including myself growing up, just had a lot of like anger, you know, and like, and frustration about like the world and their lives and whatever. And we thought it would just, we were like, who, you know, initially we were like, we want to do a voiceover because voiceovers help, especially teenage characters who never say how they're really feeling. It like helps you get in their head. But we thought it would be interesting for it not to necessarily be Davy's voice, but to be like the voice of her rage. And we were like, who is a person who is known for their rage? And so we chose John for that reason, but also because, you know, like Mindy's parents were big John McEnroe fans, and so were mine. And we thought, you know, like I bet Davy's parents or father would be like a big fan as well. So that's kind of how it all came together.
And I think that one of there's several themes in here, but the grief is, the way that grief is portrayed in this is done so beautifully because it's so heavy, but then this is also a comedy, but also the rage part. I remember feeling that as a teenager, and you never saw yourself on screen like that.
Yeah.
But also, if we look at it like with Kamala and Richa, there's a really interesting twist here because Davy thinks she's going to be perfect, right? And she's not, right? And then there's this arranged marriage thing that comes up, but there's a twist in it that you don't often see, that you never see on American television or in films. So I don't know, I feel like I don't want to give anything away, but here we are past season 1. But I think, I don't know, can you just speak a little bit about her character and that twist and like what it meant to play that? Because it's so unique.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, I owe all the credit to the writing. I think the writing is so brilliant. And like you said, it's something that we never see, especially with a South Asian character and an immigrant character, you know, somebody who has so many different dimensions and colors. And I think it's so interesting that, you know, Davy and everybody at first thinks that Kamala is this perfect Indian girl, Indian woman character who is just obedient to her parents and is a perfect student and is nice to everybody, but nobody is that perfect in real life. And so when you start to see that she does have different aspects to her, for me, that was such a wonderful thing to play because we don't often get to play these characters with these different sides. So I'm, like I said, I owe all of the credit to the writing, and I'm just so glad that I got to bring that character to life.
Yeah, and Poorna, is it Nalini? I'd say her name wrong.
Yeah, Nalini.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she's mom, right? Mm-hmm. And she is so multifaceted. Mm-hmm. And again, it's like there's the Indian mom, the stereotypical Indian mom, but she's nothing like that. She hits all these kind of different chords of, like I said, the grief and the anger, but the fierce caring about her daughter and then being intensely hard on her daughter. You hit all those notes beautifully. So that's number one. That's my observation. Sorry, but I just want to say you have also been in all these other productions, The Night of, Big Little Lies, Better Call Saul. So what attracted you to this? Because it's kind of very different from those. What about Never Have I Ever was something that you wanted to be involved in?
So I'm going to echo what Richa said, which is in any of those projects, and including Never Have I Ever, the main draw is always the writing. And the huge draw here was Lang and Mindy's sense of humor. I had not only never I have done comedy, but I've never done this type of comedy, and I don't know what the genre is. Is it called sitcom? I don't know what kind of whatever. But for me, it's American comedy, which I'm not only scared of, but I also mostly don't find funny. Like you show me an episode of Big Bang, and I'm not going to crack a smile. It's just there's a particular cadence to it. I didn't grow up here, and that's part of the reason. It's much more like British comedy that's in my wheelhouse. But Mindy and Lang's humor has always been massively appealing. So to be part of that world, but it's also, I think, as time in the business is progressing, there's always a saying like growth always takes place outside of your comfort zone, and somehow I'm feeling like growth is now taking place inside my comfort zone. As an actor, I've never explored that before. I've never been given the opportunity before, and I've never wanted to, because the writing for South Asian women characters, I came into acting so late, so by the time I got here, I was already a mom, right? So the writing for that segment was so pathetic that I was always repelled and walked like away from those kind of characters. I'm much more attracted to what we're calling mainstream characters. But with shows like Never Have I Ever and Rami, how do you sit deeply within your experience, your culture, your emotions, and how do you use that? I've totally lost my train of thought, which Lorraine, as you know, I do all the time. But it's that. It's how do you bring more of yourself is kind of the opportunity that Never Have I Ever really affords me.
And it is that thing of, because there's been so few roles, and also storylines that have been, aimed at South Asians, particularly women. For all of you, performing, like, what kind of, there's this pressure to represent when there hasn't been a lot of you out there. Does that make sense? So it's like, this is for you. This is for all of you. Did you feel that going into this? Did it feel like, okay, I got to get this right because there hasn't been a lot of representation? I don't know, Maitreyi, like you're new to this, so did you feel that coming in?
Like, that's a really interesting question, because like I look back like a year ago, right? Like just over a year, like this opportunity came at my doorstep. I remember getting that call from Lang and Mindy saying, "Oh, that's crazy," right? Like I remember that. And while filming too, like I guess I didn't realize how big it was gonna be. Cause like how is some 17-year-old kid straight out of high school gonna even fathom that? Like if I would talk to myself like a year ago, I'd be like, watch out. And that's all I would say, because it's still just crazy to me.
Wait, I'm sorry, can you just tell people just briefly like how this came about? Because it's a crazy kind of.
Yeah. With, Mindy's infamous tweet, my best friend found it and, sent it to me, said, "Yo, we should do this." And I almost said, "Nah, I need to take a nap. I'm real tired, man. Like studying is hard." But I said, "Yeah, you know what? Let's do it. Let's go." And we filmed our tape. We sent it to Mindy and Lang, and we didn't think anything would happen. But something happened, and they emailed back saying, "Can you send us more?" And I thought in my head, their standards must be really low. Genuinely was my thought. Like, I was like, everybody got this. Like, this is no big deal. Then they asked me to come to LA like a week after that. And me and my best friend looked at each other and said, "How much money do you have? Because I don't think I have enough money for a plane ticket. How are we going to get there?" Then I had explained to my parents how I sent some random people in LA videos of myself. That was awkward. But then once I did that, we were flying to LA. I auditioned for the first time in my life, like face to face. Met Mindy, met Lang. They were nice. They listened to me talk about palm trees. I don't know how they tolerated me. I walked out of the room thinking Lang and Mindy could think I'm absolutely garbage, but I had the best time of my life. And for the first time in a long time, my depressed high school self was happy for once. And I was like, wow, this is what joy feels like. And then I left the room thinking, well, That was a fun experience. But then wait, I came back one more week after that and I met this lovely lady, Poorna Jagannathan, who I got to do my first chemistry test with. And she was really nice. And I asked her, can I hug you in this test? Because, you know, consent. I don't want to just touch you because you don't know me. So I'm like, is it okay if I hug you in the scene? And she was like, yeah, that's dope. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then I did the scene and I felt great again. And then I got a call from India Lang.
Amazing.
It never gets old. The story never gets old to me.
I feel like I say it like in a different way every time. Like next time, like that was a really comedic way of saying it. Next time I should say it like a dramedy, like a really like serious.
I mean, and the real truth is we got 15,000 submissions. I mean, we got, you know, we had to hire like extra casting people to like, sift through them, you know, and it's like, I mean, and it was like the response was insane, and you know, and it was, we got people for all three of these roles, and it was, you know, it was crazy. And I remember seeing Maitreyi's first audition, and she had on this little like orange sweater, and like we like referred to you initially as little raspy because you had this raspy voice. Like I was like, I like that little raspy girl. Like, it's like, I was like, she's got spunk. There's like something spunky about her, because like initially when we conceived of this role and we were like, we want to find someone sort of out of like Hollywood who's like a fresh face and is authentic, like, you know, in our minds, we were like, let's see if we can find like the Indian teenage girl version of like Jonah Hill. Like, let's like find someone who's like just like naturally so funny, because that's like something, I mean, even, you know, like you can't teach someone, and Maitreyi is that, she's just like so funny.
But see, that's the thing too, right? Like that's the pressure. That's the one thing that my 17-year-old self new to this did understand, that so many people tried for this, and as much as I could like take that as like hell yeah, go me, I honestly took it more as, damn, we got to do right by those 14,999 other people, because they were ready to dedicate themselves to this show that they didn't even know the name of. They didn't even know what the plot was going to be, but they wanted it just as bad, meaning they just wanted it to come to life, you know? And like to those people who auditioned, like I thank them, because they helped show the world, yo, this needs to happen. There needs to be more. So there was that pressure for sure, you know, to represent brown girls, of course. And, you know, I've learned like things along the past year. And I've learned that as much as Davy can't possibly represent all South Asian females, let alone South Asian guys and girls from diaspora to being born and raised in their own country, whatever it may be, as much as Davy can't represent all of them, neither can I. I can represent my own true story, stay authentic to me, and hopefully people who are Tamil like me, who aren't Tamil, whatever they may be, guy or girl, who cares, maybe they can relate and they're down to follow me on my journey, and that's cool with me, you know?
Well, okay, one thing you're not allowed to do during this is make me cry, okay? But that's all I got.
Mabi, sorry.
Oh my gosh. You know, but what is so beautiful about this show too is that it's an individual experience, and by getting really specific, you go universal. It's that idea, right? And it really does that. And I think like, Richa, just drawing from your own background, were you able to draw from how you grew up? Because this is an immigrant story too, right? But it humanizes the immigrant path and story, unlike other things in American culture right now, which are working heavily against that. Did you draw anything from your own background or experience when doing this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not. I mean, I am a child of immigrants, so I grew up more like Devi than I did like Kamala. But I actually had the opposite experience of Kamala, where I actually moved from here to India for a few years to pursue acting over there, and so there was a lot about that experience that I used for Kamala's experience of moving here, just moving across the world to pursue your dreams alone, independently, and sometimes against the wishes of the people who are close to you in your life, and also the pressure of being a young South Asian woman. I'm married now, but before I got married, I definitely felt that same pressure that Kamala feels to get married at a certain time. And that's something that I think so many people have been able to relate to, South Asian or not. So yeah, there's so much that I can relate to with Kamala, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
No, I wish we had longer, because there's like just so much about the show that's fantastic, and it hits so many different notes. And just I wanted to know, like, this is kind of a broad question, but what did it look like in the writer's room? What did it look like to get this up and out there? It's such a nuanced, great show. You have to be careful in one way, but then you also have to take a bunch of risks. I mean, what did that look like, getting this thing off the ground?
I think like with any new show, it's like you have like a million ideas, and you are trying new things all the time, but it really usually comes to fruition once you have your cast, and you're like, like I can like look at Poorna and be like, that is Nalini. Okay, who is this character now? And you can like write in their voice. We made sure just, our writer's room is very diverse. We have many, young Indian American writers who like, we used a lot of their own experiences. One of our writers, Akshara, her family always gives C's candies to everyone. And so now that's the Vishwa Kumar's like candy of choice, is they have a whole cabinet full of C's. And and just like taking little things from everybody's life, like, and kind of peppering it throughout to make it specific, to like make these family dynamics real. We have several writers on staff who've lost parents in high school. And I think the end, the like very last episode in Malibu kind of came from a combination of Mindy went to that beach like with her father to like say goodbye to her mother, and we also had another writer who in high school like couldn't see his father's grave and went as an adult, and so like the feeling of not being able to face it kind of came from that. So we kind of built a spine of like grief and this sort of family struggle, and then also on the other end, I like love a teen show. I truly love them. I think that they are like perfect candy for your brain. And so, we wanted a love triangle. We wanted like Davy to have this like, beautiful boy that she looked at, and to have like kind of a buddy guy that also is, was also her kind of nemesis, but there's also something there. And we wanted there to be cool music and to have all the trappings of that part of it. And so I think because we wanted it to have these layers to it, hopefully that's why it speaks to so many different people.
And that last episode, all of you, but Poorna in particularly, you like ripped my heart. It was so beautiful. It was so good. And it was such a, in a way, and a cliffhanger. I mean, did you know, like, as you're making the show, did you know that it was gonna, like, it wrapped up everything so beautifully, but it also left it quite open? And I guess I'm speaking to all of you, but Lang or Poorna, because particularly those seeing that last episode. See, here now I am rambling because I'm in the episode now. But did you know it was gonna like, did you see that when you started the show, that's how it was going to wrap up, or did you kind of wind that way?
I saw that was the way it was going to wrap up, but I will say, like, I like sobbed and thought about my father while I wrote that episode. And then when we were shooting it, like watching Poorna and Maitreyi in that like scene where like Maitreyi's running and crying and Poorna's burst into tears, like it was so powerful seeing it on set, and then when it showed up on screen, and it's like my like adult brothers like texted me and were like, we are sobbing so hard right now. And it's like, you know, it was just very like, it felt like very powerful and healing for people.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay, so season 2 was announced earlier this summer. There's a big cheer in our household too. We were like, yeah. So without giving too much away, is there anything you can tell us about what to expect? And also, that's for you, Lang, but also for the rest of you, like, what can we expect from your characters? What can you tell us that's not gonna blow everything apart?
It's all you, Lang. Oh,
Hey, Lang. Lang. Lang, how are you, Lang?
Well, I mean, we left season 1 and a couple cliffhangers. You know, you have Maitreyi kissing Ben, but Paxton is also called. So, you know, we have, you know, you will see the fallout of both of those. And then also we haven't resolved whether or not, you know, they're going to go to India. And so like that's still on the table. So, you know, you may see some India in the next season. And Kamala's still, you know, dating Prashant. And so handsome Prashant returns. And we're, you know, we wanted to focus a little bit on Kamala and Nalini's like professional lives a little bit. So we see a little bit more about like where Kamala is getting her PhD, and we see a little bit more about Nalini's story once she's moved to when she moved to America with Mohan, and there's just like a lot of really good juicy teen stuff going on. You're gonna see some more smooches. I can promise you that.
Good.
All I can say is when I read the scripts from season 1, they were hilarious, but they were even more hilarious to watch. Reading this, we haven't even finished reading all the scripts yet, but reading the scripts for season 2, I'm like literally sometimes on the floor laughing. So I don't want to set high expectations, but it's really funny.
I mean, like, we'll just bring it home. Like, it's funny because I remember before the show released, after the show released, somebody told me the saying of, if you think your own show is really funny, it's probably not. But I'm so glad I heard that after the show released and after the critics came in, because when I was filming season 1, I was like, this show's funny as hell. I love it. But if I heard that before, I would have been concerned. But it's gonna be good. Confidence. Never have I ever.
Maitreyi.
Got you, Lang.
Okay, so I'm going to read you some questions from our Zoom audience. So the show really highlights the beauty of female relationships. Can you talk a little bit about how this influenced your acting? I'm going to let you guys jump in, whoever wants to do this, whoever wants to answer.
I feel like I talk a lot.
And I will call on you if you don't answer. See, that's what's going to happen.
Poorna was already kind of talking about this, but in the 9 years I've been in LA and auditioning and working, I've never had a chance to be a part of a show where, like Poorna said, I got to really live in my comfort zone, even though, you know, Kamala has an accent, so that's out of my comfort zone, but I enjoy doing it. But being able to just be my full Indian self and not have to whitewash anything at all. If anything, be more Indian. And getting to work with 2 other South Asian women, younger and older, that's something that I've never had a chance to do. And, you know, this show we're able to show not just one experience, like Maitreyi said, we can't show everybody's, but at least we can show 3, which is better than 1. And hopefully this is going to open doors for so many other projects. And the fact that this show does focus so much on female relationships, whether it's the family or Devi and her friends, I just think that's what makes this show so brilliant.
Okay, I want to give you a chance. I don't want to cut anybody off. All right. The grief in this really resonated with me, having lost people very young. How did you approach this subject to communicate to a younger audience? It's a great question.
You know, a lot of it, I think, I have a much younger sister, and when my dad died, she was still in high school, and some of it was inspired from watching her and like how she struggled to process it. And I think that in addition to just wanting to kind of accurately show how that grief can kind of be processed and like diverted into weird acting out stuff, uh, I think both Mindy and I felt like it was important to also show a teen going to therapy and like working through it and seeing how hard it was. And also, you know, that like her mother who loves her so desperately, but is also struggling with her own grief and is having a hard time like processing that too. And just seeing that like, you know, it's a bumpy road to like figure out what's going on in your head. And I think, you know, for season 2, like Davy has said goodbye to her father, but it doesn't mean she's all better now. You know, it doesn't mean she's like 100% like a reasonable person who totally like is level-headed, you know. And I think just knowing that grief is a process and it's like never, I mean, at least for me in my experience, losing my father, like it's never done. You're not just like, check, okay, I'm all better. It's like you always feel it. And for young people, I think it's really, it cuts even more to the core.
And I also, you know, something we talked about last time, Lorraine, in the SAG panel was the show also came out at a time where we weren't processing grief. We were, you know, just processing anxiety and fear, and we weren't grieving where we were at. And I think the show became, at least for me, became a channel to grieve what we were going through. And so it was from, you know, obviously I read it, shot it, everything, but it was especially the last episode was hugely cathartic because it really made me confront a lot of emotions that I hadn't wanted to around the current situation.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, watching that particular, yeah, that's a really good point because we watched it, like I was saying, my family watched the first time and then we rewatched it.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like in lockdown and it's like, wow.
Right, right.
So I don't know if I can say the names of the people that are asking these questions, but I will just say this from Nikki Cole, who says, just want to thank you for making a series about nerdy, loud teenage girls. I was definitely that. Okay. Somebody else asked, what was your favorite episode to shoot?
Yikes.
Wow, I don't know. You guys answer first.
Oh man, but they're all so cool because like Malibu, we gotta go to like the beach. That was so cool. My himself knows Great Lakes that are just fresh water, but this was a beach with salt water. So cool.
Very cold salt water.
Oh yeah, it was very cold. Actually, no, I'm romanticizing that bit. Never mind. Caught
That,
myself there.
as beautiful as that scene was, it was not that beautiful standing over there at that time.
I do think episode 10, there were a lot of moments, but I think the beach scene was spectacular to shoot. And you know, I think it was like, for me, the writing was just completely, you know, you shoot a scene like that. We were there from 5 a.m. to 7:30 at night. And for you to sustain, or for an actor to sustain that scene, it really rides on the writing. So it was just fantastic, emotional, intense writing. And you know, just even as an actor, seeing Maitreyi come into that scene so loaded every time was so moving and so.
No, wait, hold on. No, Poorna actually really helped me in that scene. Like I couldn't have asked for a better person to cry with. Like when Nalini hugs Davy in that scene, it's literally just me wanting a hug from Poorna. Long.
But I think all three of us were just like on
Oh,
the beach, and it was such a culmination of the show and our experiences. And I think Richa has said once that she's seen so many people in the situation. She wishes those people had those conversations, and they actually never had those conversations. So it was verbalizing things that are not said, and like I have never said I love you to my mom. You know what I mean? So it's cultural, and it's about talking about stuff, and an explosion of yeah, it just felt very explosive shooting it.
It was also the last, I think, last week or last 2 weeks of shooting. And so it just felt like everything was coming together so beautifully. And for us three, that scene together, it just tied everything up so, so beautifully. And I mean, I was more just like a witness in that scene, but watching them it was spectacular, as Poorna said. I mean, it was heartbreaking and beautiful. And I was just grateful to be a part of that scene so I could watch that magic.
And somebody here asked, to the actors, what is a role you would like to portray? Sorry, what is a role you would like to portray at some point, in addition to the great performances you are doing now?
Thinking. My brain's buffering. Oh man, I feel like I'd really like want to play like a anti-hero. Cause I love superheroes, but I don't want to be like, I'm Superman. Yay. Just no. What?
Jessica Jones type of thing, or
More like a Deadpool type of beat, you know? Like also Deadpool's my favorite. Canadian, Ryan Reynolds. No, but yeah, that'd be really cool. Something like that. Or like in a thriller. Like, wow. Yeah, that'd be cool.
I'm much more in the Borat genre. I'm not even.
That's so true.
Not even kidding. I'm not even like that would be my dream job.
You would kill it. You would be so good. Like I actually no, this needs to happen. Poorna, this is serious now.
That's a genre that I aspire towards.
You got this.
and it's out there in the universe now, so you know.
Totally.
Richa, anything for you, or are you gonna skip this one?
You know, I feel like this is a question actors get all the time, and yet I still never have an answer for this. You know, I just hope to continue to see more and more projects like this that are unique and different and giving a voice to people who have never had a voice before. And for me personally, getting to explore more South Asian roles, because as we've been talking about, one character or three characters is not enough to represent everybody, and it never will be. But I would love to just continue on that journey and be as authentic and sincere as possible in portraying these roles.
Another question is here, and this is probably for Lang. What changed the most from the initial idea of the show and what you ended up making as the show? A major character change or storyline, and what caused that change?
I had a baby this year, so my memory's bad. Kind of thing.
I had one 17 years ago, and my memory's bad, so I don't really know.
It doesn't seem like it's coming back. It seems like it's definitely gone.
Oh, it's over.
I think I don't remember if there was. I think a lot of the plot stuff we had stayed, but I do think that we had to do some work initially on the way we had initially written Davy's character to what it ended up becoming. I think we had her initial voice was kind of like Danny McBride's. She was so rude, and we had I remember in the first episode she was rude to her mom, rude to her friends, rude to her therapist, rude to Ben Gross. It was just so rude that we were I think this is too much. And Maitreyi is so like warm and like sweet and funny that we were like, you know what? We need to make her like not like hateful. It's just she's like difficult and loud, but she's not like awful. And so like we ended up reshooting some scenes so like that like Melanie and Davy like weren't like horrible to each other. They were just like, we don't like get each other, and then like we actually ended up changing the character of the therapist, and we recasted it to be Niecy Nash because we were like, the therapist should be like someone who like Davy respects, but also like kind of like puts Davy in her place a little bit. Like she kind of like busts Davy's balls. So like we like kind of rethought the character. It used to be like a character that like Davy could kind of push her around, and like we sort of changed that. But it was mostly just like once we knew who our Davy was and saw what her strengths were and what we like wanted to watch, we kind of changed that character a bit.
And this is a question for all the panelists. What shows are you watching? What are you watching lately?
The Queen's Gambit. I like am like 10 minutes from finishing it. But my favorite show in quarantine, Money Heist. Amazing. 10 out of 10. Love it. Nairobi, the best. Chef kisses. 5 out of 5 stars on IGN. Great stuff.
I'm watching a show on HBO called Our Boys. It's best acting. Did you see it?
Yes.
Best acting. Best acting I've ever seen on TV.
Stunning. And not an easy subject.
Best. Yeah, I guess. And Criminal was kind of super interesting on Netflix. And Indian Matchmaking, Lorraine.
Stop. Pause.
I was waiting for that.
We were talking about it before we went live, and we had to stop ourselves, everyone out there in audience land. So yeah, if we get going, because we're running out of time already, and if we get going. But yeah, we need to have a whole other panel about that.
We totally do.
Lang, Richa, anything?
I just started the new season of Fargo, which I feel like Chris Rock is so excellent in. He's so good. And I like love Noah Hawley's writing and directing. Like I think it's just like such a fun show to watch. I also like our room has been like sort of semi-obsessed with The Vow, the NXIVM.
Oh, right.
Story. So, we've been talking a lot about cults. I don't know. Maybe I'm starting one if anyone's interested.
There perhaps is a giant national one. I'm not saying there is, but maybe.
Good. You might be right.
I'm not really somebody who binges shows. I like to take my time with them, but I binged every season of Schitt's Creek, and I don't regret it at all.
I don't regret it. I love that is a really good place to end. I want to thank you all, for the audience, for sitting with us, and all of you great panelists. And I can talk forever about the show. So thank you for asking me to do this and for being here. And this was fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Great questions. Thank you, everyone.